Melbourne, well known for its coffee culture and standard almost worldwide. Yet, a recent article, True Brew by John Bailey published in The Age, proclaimed that not only is Melbourne's self-image as a coffee town inflated, but it is overshadowed by a traditional rival, Sydney. In Seeking the Truth today, Ross Quail, the president of AustralAsian Specialty Coffee Association, with his experience in the coffee industry at a national level, sheds some light on the issue.
The AustralAsian Specialty Coffee Association was founded by a group of passionate coffee individuals in around 2000, and it was seeking to greater represent the coffee community and also provide a platform for education and understanding of specialty coffee, which differs from your regular coffees that are out there in the market, and also to allow for some pathways to World Championship coffee competitions.
What's your opinion on this issue, especially so when looking at it at a national scale?
Well, I think the important thing to realise is that opinions are things that sometimes precipitate responses and more education and more discussion, and that only helps to get people's interest in coffee to begin to develop. So I think it's important to have discussion. People are always going to have opinions on coffee. My personal opinion is that coffee is something that, unlike many other beverages, be it a cup of tea or say a bottle of Coke or something else like that, if it differs slightly, you don't see the difference in the way people will behave. If you get a bad cup of coffee in the morning and you're a coffee lover, it can change your emotional state and your whole state of being for the next couple of hours. So I think that the fact that people take it so passionately is something that's important. But do I really mind about people's opinions on it? Not so much, because I think everybody loves their coffee, and that's the important thing. When it comes to trying to judge coffee, we save that for an actual competition where we've got clearly defined parameters. But look, I invite discussion into coffee at any level because I think it's a good thing.
And the article actually takes off on quite an absolute note with the opening statement claiming, "Melbourne, you don't know coffee." So what's your take on that, or even on the article as a whole, especially on Melbourne, you don't know coffee?
Well, I think in terms of media and stories and those types of things, it's much more, what should I say, you'll get a better result out of the general public and you'll create more discussion if you give an absolute opinion that may provoke a response from people. So I think I take that with a grain of salt. In terms of that Sydney's coffee is better than Melbourne's, or Melbourne's coffee is better than Sydney's, well, both states have developed their own coffee cultures. You might say that in regards to the association, Victoria is a very strong state in regards to the Australasian Specialty Coffee Association. We have an active Roasters Guild. We have a very active community that has Roasters Guild meetings that have up to 19 different companies with 35 to 40 people attending monthly meetings that actively participate together as an industry. We have coffee competitions that exist at the Royal Melbourne Show, and those are quite big events that are often viewed by hundreds of people. Now, when you go to New South Wales, there isn't the development on that level in the coffee community. However, when you separate that and you go to a cafe scene, well, there's some clearly different aspects to both of those communities. I think it's fair to say that you can find a coffee that is bad anywhere you go, but insofar as Sydney, maybe the size and the probably the more international nature, might find that you'll get a few more coffee companies that might be more standouts. But I think Melbourne still has plenty to offer, and maybe just literally the size of the cities between the two will evidence numbers in terms of better cafes here or there, literally by the size of the city. So I'm quite confident that I could go to both Sydney and Melbourne, get a good coffee and a bad coffee.
How about the aspect of Melbourne losing out to its traditional rival Sydney in the aspect of coffee standards and culture as mentioned in the article?
Well, I'd probably disagree with it, but I'd qualify it in the sense that the first thing you have to realise is that in some of the places that you're talking about in Sydney versus Melbourne, they make coffee in two very contrasting styles. So if you're going to compare apples with oranges, you're always going to end up with a shortfall. You might find that if I was to make a generalisation, you can go to some Sydney cafes where they will literally pour espressos in a different manner. They might be a little bit shorter, a little bit more tightly packed, and they might differ to something that you could get somewhere else in Melbourne where we would pour a coffee in a slightly different way. Now, neither is incorrect, but they provide a taste and a flavour profile, and they exhibit different qualities within the cup. So I think if you're going to be judgmental on that level, you'll always find one is different to the other. There's many micro roasteries that have sprung up in both Sydney and Melbourne. Evidence you might have your Seven Seeds in South Melbourne, not in South Melbourne, but in just off the Vic Market in Berkeley Street. You've got places like Padre Coffee and many other ones that are coming up within Melbourne in the CBD that are micro roasteries that are dealing with cup of excellence coffees and really what are clearly defined as specialty coffees. So those types of places will give you as good a coffee as what you'll get anywhere in Australia. If you go to any outlying suburb of any major city or major metropolitan area, you will experience a change in the quality of the coffee. So I think that's fair to say. What we're here to do as part of the AustralAsian Specialty Coffee Association is to make sure that those people have access to a professional network of coffee, like-minded, passionate coffee people that can help to evolve their standards. And I think a lot of this rests on the coffee companies themselves. So you have multinational and national coffee companies that are out there promoting their brand. You'll find a David Macon from Veneziano Coffee will be out there. He'll be out there training people in different cafes. So I think that the main point of this is that in order to raise the standards, the coffee companies have a responsibility, but also the operators of these cafes have to not buy coffee on cost, but start buying on quality. And that will make a difference, coupled with proper training. So I don't think I could say one city is better than the other, but maybe on numbers, you could find that Sydney, being a bigger city, would literally may have more cafes that we might like to drink at, but no less by ratio.
How about the standard? Would you say anything about the standard of coffee between Sydney and Melbourne?
Well, again, you can judge that on different levels. You can judge it in a competition framework where you've got, you've got Queensland, Tim Adams, who just won last year the National Barista Championship title. So you've got Queensland, a state that a lot of people would say doesn't have a developed coffee culture. However, we've got a national champion coming out of Queensland. We've had national champions come out of Victoria, but not so much in recent times out of New South Wales. So I think to quote people on saying that one is better than the other, I think that's again, I don't think it does a whole lot of good. I think it promotes discussion, which might be a saving grace, but I think it's very hard to say that. Anybody on a given day, if they take their eye off the ball, can make a coffee that's less than good. And what we're all about is helping people to understand that quality and excellence and the acknowledgement of where the coffees come from, of origin, of roasting, of the coffee making, of the craft, is that it's a constant art form that needs to be looked at every single day. So everybody is striving for that excellence every single day. So I wouldn't agree with those statements, no.
So what do you think is the future of Melbourne's coffee culture or even standard? And do you think the traditional rivals Sydney, traditional in other aspects, not just coffee, might actually take on the eminence eventually, coffee culture and standard?
Well, as a president of a national association, what I would like to see is Australia as a unified presence in the coffee community. So I think that there are immensely talented people in every state of Australia in coffee. And my aim is to galvanise those abilities and that talent and make it a national perspective. I think that's the most important thing. So to that end, I think what we have to do is recognise the good in all of our areas and try and buck this Australian trend of knocking one place over another and start realising that there are people that are immensely talented both in roasting, knowledge of barista, of craft, and all the other areas supporting in coffee. And we develop an Australasian Specialty Coffee Association that's truly representative of our nation as a whole. In all of this we haven't talked about South Australia, Western Australia, we haven't talked about ACT, we haven't talked about Queensland, and all of those states have a lot to offer. So from my mind, I'd like to see less division and less competition between the states and more of a unified approach in engaging specialty coffee at every level, and everybody in every household in every state of this entire country will be the beneficiary of better coffee. And that's the point about having a national association. So for my mind, I'm not interested in state versus state rivalry. I would say on a personal level, yes, I'd love to see a Victorian win a national barista championship, but none of us can do this journey on our own. We need all the help of everybody involved, and then it's truly national. And then we can say that Australia is a powerhouse on the world stage for coffee knowledge and specialty coffee production, roasting, and we're recognised as having, say, 3 out of the last 5 world latte art champions have been Australian. We've had a world champion world champion barista in Paul Bassett. We've had a number 2 in the world in David Macon, and we hope to have another world barista champion in some of the future champions to come. So my aim is to promote Australia as a whole and not look at states by states, because I think ultimately we only lose out in our learning and our understanding of specialty coffee.
Well, time will tell.